Welcome back to the channel, everybody. Thank you again for subscribing and for liking this video and for keeping the channel afloat. The goal always is to keep America afloat by sharing important news, good and bad, that we need to highlight, spotlight, memorialize, so that it does not go under the radar. And you notice here from CNN, this was supposed to fly under the radar into the weekend, released Friday, just about dinner time, 5 o'clock Friday. They say ICE is asking for agency volunteers to assist at the U.S.-Mexico border amid a surge of migrant children. Now, they don't want to call it a crisis. That would be too honest. No, and we would never expect honesty from CNN, but it would be nice to just see even a little bit of truth. And so I wanted to share some while they're sharing it. This says, Immigration and Customs Enforcement asked volunteers from the agency to support the federal government's efforts along the U.S.-Mexico border as the Biden administration continues to grapple with an influx of migrants at the southwest border. Now, when you hear continue to grapple with an influx, that just tells you that it's not managed. It's not under control. What do you call that? If it's an emergency that's not under control, that's a crisis. They don't want to call it that. This says volunteers were requested to help Customs and Border Protection with security for migrant families and unaccompanied children, according to Homeland Security official. So they're babysitting. They're asking for volunteers to come in and babysit. The deployments could begin as soon as this weekend at locations along the southwest border, most likely Texas, the official said. So good. They've been criticizing Texas for weeks for opening and for doing away with a mask mandate. And now they're going to send a bunch of babysitters in to make sure that the illegal immigrant children who are crossing the border are going to stay. This says the request for support, first reported by the Washington Post, comes as the administration scrambles to move unaccompanied migrant children out of Border Patrol custody as quickly as possible. Go figure. I made the claim earlier, I think this month, it was not that long ago, that Joe Biden would be very quick to move these children out of the custody of Border Patrol and into the custody of families and volunteers. And anyone who knows those people, raise your hand. Do you know anyone who's ever taken a child at the border as a refugee or as a sponsor family? No, they're all Democrat donors, no doubt. They're all Wayfair cabinet owners, no doubt. So while they're moving children quickly as possible, they say the children who are apprehended by Border Patrol are required to be transferred to the Department of Health and Human Services custody within 72 hours. You can't let those, new groceries sit on the table for too long? But the Biden administration has not been able to keep pace, and the children have been stuck in Border Patrol custody beyond the 3-day limit, with some in custody around 10 days. And during this time, they're not able to call parents or shower or do any of the normal things other than basically sit on your cot and eat your 3 hots a day. On Monday, Department of Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas, say that one 5 times fast, asked department employees to volunteer to help support the surge of migrants along the U.S.-Mexico border, calling the situation overwhelming. So you've completely lost control then if you're overwhelmed. According to the DHS source who received these emails sent by Mayorkas. And he says, quote, "Today I activated the volunteer force to support Customs and Border Protection as they face a surge in migration along the southwest border. You have likely seen news about the overwhelming numbers of migrants seeking access to this country along the southwest border," the email read. DHS did not immediately respond to a request for comment. And can you believe that this is the entire story from CNN? This is not a paid propaganda to make Biden look good. At least if it is, it's really, really poorly aimed. Because what this does is it spotlights that they are begging for volunteers. And people say, well, why would they be asking for volunteers? Don't they have employees? They're asking employees to volunteer their time. They're not asking normal people, normal citizens, you and me, to go and babysit these kids. And believe it or not, they're not even asking the Democrat donor, Wayfair cabinet owners to come in and babysit these kids. They get them once the kids are all cleaned up. They're asking ICE agency employees to come and volunteer their time. They don't have the funding to pay them, apparently, so they're just asking for their time for free. And this is not the only example of the media quietly beginning to dish on Biden here and there. Like I said at the beginning of the video, this story from CNN came out Friday at 5 o'clock because they wanted you to just quietly hear about this and let it kind of slip in one ear and out the other into the weekend. All the same, they still have to tell you something negative about Biden. They may as well time it just right. Here's another one from NBC over the weekend, says Biden immigration policies cause a predictable border crisis. Why didn't he plan for it? Playing to the Democratic base on the issue while ignoring the need for an enforcement has merely exacerbated a problem. Ruh-roh, that's from NBC News. Let's read this one. This is from Sunday. Again, on the weekend, so if you catch it, you're one of the intelligent people that read the news on the weekend. This isn't meant for the masses. This is meant for the intelligent people to have a serious debate about Biden's ineptitude in about 3 weeks when they try to jam Kamala in before June. This says President Joe Biden is facing a crisis at the border. See, even NBC News is willing to call it a crisis. CNN won't call it a crisis and don't call it a comeback, but NBC News is willing to call it one. That's interesting. They say President Joe Biden, resident of the United States, Joe Biden, is facing a crisis at the border, even if the White House would prefer not to use that word. Oh, so they're not the only one. Ambassador Roberta Jacobson, the administration's coordinator for the southern border, certainly tried her best to avoid that term, crisis, on Wednesday when she said, quote, "We have to do what we do, regardless of what anybody calls the situation," unquote. She was referring to a massive surge of migrants along the U.S. border with Mexico that federal authorities are struggling to keep up with. And that crisis or situation, she said, is at least partly of the Biden administration's making. Oh, so NBC News is saying, hey, listen, it's at least partly his fault. That's honest. This says immigration still has to be managed as Biden's administration is rapidly being reminded, which is another way of saying he's failing over and over daily. Otherwise, it exposes the migrants to a high level of personal risk. So you thought for a second here that maybe NBC would have a level-headed take against Biden. The take is that he's not doing enough to protect the illegal immigrants at the border. You got me? CNN said these kids are being held for 10 days. Joe Biden's not doing very good on the border because, well, it's not a crisis yet, but these kids, we're not getting them in fast enough. That was their concern. And then you have NBC. Biden's problem is that he's not dealing with this well enough, that these people are coming in sick. We want them to come in healthy. NBC, you're getting the wrong point here. We have illegal immigration. That's the problem. No, it's that the people are coming in sick because we're not taking good care of them. We're not putting them up in a 5-star hotel. They're not going to Trump Hotel, so they're not going to have a great time. This says the president, that's resident of the United States, Joe Biden, campaigned on easing immigration controls, including a moratorium on deportations, an end to former President Donald Trump's, quote, wait in Mexico policy, I think this is called stay in Mexico policy, for asylum seekers and halting construction of the border wall. See, why? Why would you halt the construction of a border wall? The platform gave migrants good reason to believe it would be easier to get into the United States if Joe Biden were elected. Since taking office, Biden has also given them good reason to think they might be allowed to stay, because he said it's not a good time to come right now, which just tells you, what is he not saying there? He's saying it's not a good time to come now, which means it is a good time to come another time. It's very obvious. It's not a good time to come now. It just means it is a good time to come whenever else you want. And they're just going to come anyways. Let's be honest. They're all wearing shirts outside, knocking on the door, saying, Biden told us to come on over. He's throwing a party. Like Andrew Cuomo in his back pocket. I'll cook for you. Come on out. I'll cook for you. Joe Biden has also given them good reason to think they might be allowed to stay because the immigration bills, as his immigration bill, would offer legal status and a pathway to citizenship to much of the U.S. undocumented population. So anyone who's currently here illegally, Joe Biden's just going to snap his fingers and you're going to be a citizen now. The same as you and me, and it's incredibly unfair because they've taken from the system while we have paid into it, and it's not even remotely ever going to weigh itself out. NBC continues. Biden needs to admit that his eagerness to roll back Trump's immigration policies without a meaningful plan to deal with the predictable migration increase has led to chaos at the border. See, before you called it a crisis, but let's just say chaos, that's fine. While many voters wanted a kinder, gentler approach than Trump's, no mean tweets, but now we have a crisis at the border. Humanitarian one, CNN said. It's a humanitarian crisis. If kids can't shower for 10 days, that is a humanitarian crisis. They're not allowed to leave. They can't go call their mom and say, pick me up. I didn't get over. I didn't make it. I got picked up. All right, I'll see you in Tijuana. Nope, they're not allowed to leave. Democrats cannot simply wish away the need for effective border security and immigration's regulation short of declaring open borders, a deeply unpopular idea, carrying numerous economic and security risks. Right, so essentially saying Democrats can't have their way. You can't have your cake and eat it too, or you can't eat your cake and have it too. I think that's the right way of saying that. Unless you just want to say, hey, we have open borders, which they will never do. They said playing to the wishes of the Democrat base while ignoring the need for more enforcement has merely exacerbated the problem at the border, and it is becoming impossible to deny as much as the Biden administration would like to. It's not only a problem in terms of the U.S. being ill-equipped and under-resourced to handle a surge, it also means migrants to take risks on dangerous terrain and increase the likelihood that unaccompanied minors will end up in perilous conditions. That was Trump's entire argument. He said shut down the funnel of new illegal aliens coming across the border, and you'll shut down any risk of any dangerous terrain being crossed and any unaccompanied minors ending up in perilous conditions. Why does it take us making it happen for you to see that it was a bad thing to do, when we told you it was a bad thing to do? They continue. They say the numbers are stark. More than 100,000 migrants attempted to enter the U.S. in February. That's more than 3 times the amount in 2020 from the same month, and the highest level for that month in 5 years. Quote, internal DHS and HHS, that's Department of Homeland Security and I believe in Health and Human Services, reports shows that the crisis at the border is significantly worse than the Biden admin has acknowledged, unquote. That's from Nick Miroff at the Washington Reporter. Quote, there are now 3,500 unaccompanied minors in grim Border Patrol detention cells. That's a record. So Biden actually has a record number of kids in cages. How despicable. That's more than 1,000 minors, exceeding the amount of time that they can be detained beyond transfer to shelter. So they have people on a timeline. You're not supposed to be there any more than 10 days. Over 1,000 kids have been over there way longer than that. When asked about it, of course, Jen Psaki said, I'm not going to confirm numbers here or there or what have you. And then she laughed and was like, oh, opening schools? Who cares? Let's keep some more Cajun facilities open. Why not? They're blaming it on a demand. Because who wanted to come to America while Trump was president? And we had the best years of economic success in history. No. They want to come while the potato is in office. The resident-in-chief is going to blame surges tending to respond to hope. That's what it is. I'm guessing that's it. He says there's a significant hope for a more humane policy. 4 years of pent-up demand. So the illegal immigrants who are going to come to the U.S. and take any kind of money that you've paid into a welfare system that hopefully would one day go back into Social Security for you, there's a pent-up hope and demand from other people who've never paid into that system, who've never even been well-equipped enough to build their own system. And Joe Biden thinks, hey, I can make a voter out of that. Hey, wow, I can make a voter out of that. So that's what's going to happen here. And NBC is even telling you, we might want to consider having like a backup plan. Like, I know you said Trump is super duper racist for building a wall, and so we're going to halt the wall, but don't you guys want to put up like a giant impenetrable fence before you tear the wall down? Like, just so that we have something? Nope, they didn't think about that. So here NBC is even pointing out to you, Biden immigration policies causing a predictable border crisis. CNN didn't want to call it a crisis. NBC is willing to do it in the headline on Sunday. So there it is. There's the weekend's update in terms of bad news for Biden. So here it is. You have the mainstream fake news media slowly beginning to turn on the old man, the big man himself, the big guy, Papa Fry, the big potato, the genderless potato himself, resident-in-chief, Joe Biden. He got turned on. That's what I thought. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like the video. If you could, share this video and subscribe to the channel. This channel doesn't exist. This video doesn't exist without your support. So subscribe, comment, share it, like it, bop it, twist it, flick it, and please help me keep America afloat.